Think about on a spiritual path. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 7, right? And this is clear as day, King James Version. You got to be the King James Version, because that's the authentic, It's got to be authentically King James, or, It says in there, I am the Lord your God. I create good, I create evil. I create light, I create darkness. I, the Lord God, do all these things. I've asked every pastor in the world to explain that to me, and I've gotten the biggest moose story in the world. Because you can go into the book of Job, same thing. You have the devil bargaining with God. They're making a bet of who Job is going to be more loyal to. What does this symbology really represent? It's what I'm telling you. If you go back into the 7 principles of Tahuti, they're just varying degrees of energy. There's no such thing as good or bad. It all comes from the same source. You can't differentiate. Because if you believe that religious concept, did not God create the devil? You'd have to say yes. So who's responsible for the evil anyway? No, people, no, God's not. See, brother, your semantics, you're twisting around. No, I'm not. I'm telling you exactly what your Bible says. You're not accepting being confronted with the reality. So I'm saying that when somebody's working their own spiritual path, they rid their mind of all those illusions. That doesn't exist when you're tapping into the higher realms. God and the devil is a fabrication of your mind. That's something that was man created. Because you're going to find out there's no difference between this energy you're calling the devil and this energy you're calling God. There's no difference. You're just going to find out when you access them how you work with these vibrational degrees of energy, depending on what type of spiritual work you're doing. It's the same thing, for an example, when you go back into ancient Egypt. And we've talked a lot over the last several months about the deity Set, right? There's a lot of people in the Egyptian or conscious community, when they hear Set, they're so religious, they'll go, oh, Set represents the devil. Really? In what way? Well, Set is like, see, you're bringing religion now into higher levels of learning. That's not what it represents. If you go back to the 19th, 20th dynasty, this is very important to understand. Set is synonymous with the deity of chaos, right? They say he's the deity of chaos. Now, you always have to establish this when working greater black magic or creating your spiritual path. In order to have order first, you always got to have chaos. You have to have darkness. Out of darkness and chaos, everything is formed. Their Bible, again, confirms that in the very first chapter of Genesis. Because before God said, let there be light, what is that confirmation of? He was in darkness. When you go back into ancient Egypt, you'll find Set, the deity of chaos, no boundaries, no limitations, no beginnings, no end, undefinable. That whole concept of Set being the devil was demonized around the 19th, 20th dynasty of Egypt when Set decided he didn't want to follow what the Osirian cult was trying to propagate in Egypt at that time, which was the worship of one God. Set was like, nah, I'm not dealing with that shit. So when he decided to step back peacefully, then you'll find that there was a concentrated effort to make it look like he was this rebel. Then you get the story of him being cast into the desert. The new movie Gods of Egypt tries to portray it, but then they get religious at the end. They almost tapped into it, but they got religious. We are all a representation of that Set. Anytime you go against the norm, you are accessing the chaos energy. And they have a system called chaos magic, which is another spiritual system one can work. Anytime you question something, you're accessing the Set aspect of the archetype energy of your subconscious mind. That's what Set represents. Not conforming, not following the norm, not doing what everybody is doing, not being afraid to speak your mind, not being afraid to question things. That's what Set represented in Egypt. Contrary to belief, you have everybody in the Egyptian conscious community is on this Osiris and Horus worship, and everybody is on Horus represents, he's symbolic of who Jesus was. Now here we are again, bringing monotheism into higher levels of learning where it ain't got no place. Okay? You literally have people that look at Horus. Horus is the real Jesus. That makes me laugh. You know how that makes me laugh? It's comical to me. And then they look at Ra like they did in religion. Ra is the Most High. And the Most High of what? Where is the Most High? See, now we start getting outside of real. Well, the Most High exists. Where does the Most High exist? See, anytime you go outside of yourself, you're going to run into a brick wall. Because this is a representation. Were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
Is that because the mind is trying to bring back to comfortable religion?
Yes and no. The mind is still, Real spirit, exactly. Yes, real spiritual magic. When I'm talking about real greater black magic is reprogramming the subconscious mind. We have to reprogram the subconscious mind because, yes, I say yes in a sense to what you said and no. Yes in the sense, we always tend to gravitate what we feel comfortable with, yes. Because that's what we've been taught from a very young age. Now you have to think about this for a minute. At some point in our life, somebody sat us down, whether it was your mother, your father, an uncle, an aunt, a pastor, or a reverend. You got to a certain point in your youth where you were sat down, and that's when that spell of indoctrination started. Not saying that person did it intentionally, but when that person first sat you down and said, you see, there's a God, and he created the planet, and he exists in heaven. This is where it started. Now this has been pumped into you since you were a kid. So now you started there. Now as you get older, if you stay in those systems, just think, you might not come out of that till you're your 30s, your 40s, some people older. So now you got 30 to 40 years or more of reprogramming that needs to be done to the subconscious mind. So yes, in a sense, I'm glad you bring that up because you'll have people that'll say, "I'll leave Christianity, Islam, and Judaism," and they'll say, "I study Egyptology now. I consider myself spiritually conscious." But they bring that same way of thinking into Egyptology. So yes, they'll say Ra. Ra's the sun. The sun represents the Most High. So they'll say Ra is the Most High. And subconsciously what they're saying is if they worship the law, Allah, God, or Jehovah is the Most High that exists in heaven. It's not a reality. So once you get bypast that way of thinking and illusion, you're going to find out that this is all a representation of you and how you evolve and the internal war that goes inside of yourself. That God or devil that you're fighting exists inside of you. You're just as much God as you are the devil. That very devil, listen to this. In order to recognize evil, what is that confirmation of? Somebody answer that for me. If you recognize something as being evil, what does that mean?
You're evil too.
You've actually, thank you. You actually have experience in it because you wouldn't be able to decipher that it was evil if you say, man, that's evil. There's something in your DNA and your nature that knows that. Now you need to tap into it. Now I've always said this. One has to learn to appease their desires, not be consumed by them. Okay? What do I mean by that? When it comes to food, diet, sex, or doing things that one might term evil, okay, which is not really evil. I'm just saying, it's okay every now and then to have a piece of cake. It just means don't eat cake 7 days a week. See, not mastering it is not, I'm not going to touch it ever. Because now what you're doing is you're going against your very nature. You're trying to fight something, you're not going to win that battle. Now some people can just do it. If it comes naturally, it comes naturally. But here's the thing, you might just walk down the street and you may never eat cake in like 4, 5, 6 years, or you may never have had a hot dog in 8, 9 years, and you walk past a cart for some reason, you're craving a hot dog. What's happening is there's a genetic spirit trying to come through that wants to be fed. It's not you, the spirit wants to be fed. So it's okay to occasionally appease that spirit. I'm not saying, it's the same thing. I had a brother, hey, this is a funny thing. He was in the class last time, and he had asked, I feel sometimes, is it wrong for me occasionally to go to a strip club? You know, I beat myself up about it, but for whatever reason, this is his own personal words, and this could be to him. I can't judge him. It recharges him energy-wise, and he does it maybe once every 3 or 4 months. I said, no, there's nothing wrong with that, because there's a spirit that needs that rejuvenation. I'm not going to judge you for that, because why? Because we hear strip club, we know there's certain things that go on there, but I don't classify everything that goes on there as negative. I'm not in that frame of mind or that frame of thinking. I'm looking beyond that. So I'm using that as an example. Now, I told the brother, if you're going to go to a strip club 4, 5, 6 nights a week, then now you're being consumed and you're being controlled by an energy that you have no control over. We have to get out of this thing in spirituality. One thing nobody wants to talk about as if sexuality is taboo. Nobody talks about it in consciousness. I heard the most dumbest, excuse my language, I heard the most dumbest garbage I've ever heard in my life. There's this new thing in the conscious community that melanated people don't practice oral sex. I was like, really? Where did that come from? What text can we find it in? Yeah, I can go back into the Kama Sutra. I can go back into ancient Egyptian texts and find otherwise. I can take you to documents. I can take you to etches on the pyramids to show otherwise. I want to know, where did that come from? We create these stupid things like, oh, that was something that was taught to us by the European, oral sex. That's something we were doing prior to the European. And you'll find out most of those people that don't, especially if you're a male, I guarantee they don't have successful relationships, unfortunately. Because now if it's a preference. If you don't choose to partake in that, that's your business. But don't sit there and tell somebody that does, or we don't do that because that's something that, stop. That's ridiculous. Now, here, that same brother that posed that question to me, there's tribes in Africa where they did a fertility ritual where literally the man would take his erect penis and stick it into the earth. It was a symbolic ritual of fertility. Are we doing that? Does anybody here do that? Okay, that's my whole point. You see how stupid we can get into these nonsensical debates that hold no weight and hold no clout? See, we always like to talk about this back in the day crap. And a lot of people have a sickness back in the day. Back in ancient Egypt, we did this and that. Well, I'm going to tell you this. It's irrelevant if you can't update it and bring it into 2016. Because we see what's going on in the news. As I told you, that whole Orlando shooting was a ritual. You got to pay attention to what went on with that. And as I told you, homosexuals are guardians of the gateway in many African cultures. And their blood is almost as pure and innocent as children's blood is. And you got to understand, they literally believe, and X-Men had a lot of science in it. Go watch it. That dude Apocalypto is telling you who Yahweh, Allah, Jehovah is. He says, people have mistaken me for years as Allah, Jehovah, and Yahweh. And he said, I come to destroy this planet, and out of that destruction, I'm going to create rebirth. That's what he says in the movie. Okay? These individuals that really believe in high levels of monotheism, when you go into monotheism, that's why in the Torah, there's all this blood sacrifice. That's why there's slitting of calves and sprinkling the blood on the four corners of the altar. Watch a Catholic priest when he gives the mass with the chalice and the bread. Catholic priests that have been around for a while will do something if you're not paying attention. I pay attention to this shit. See, they'll do this with the chalice or the host. They'll go like this to the front of the altar, to the back, tip it to the side, to the left. That's in your Torah. Anytime they slit the neck of an animal, they put it on the four corners of the altar as a sacrifice to Yahweh, right? This Yahweh in the Bible is a cannibal. He's a blood god. They sacrifice blood to this deity. This is what they're doing. They're reenacting these rituals because they believe by feeding this God of the Bible blood, they're giving it power, and it's going to give them power, okay? And you'll find in a lot of their rituals, the blood of children and homosexuals is their preference. Now, you got to dig a little deep into that research, but I'm telling you that's a reality. They're going to use this whole Islamic thing, and those Islamic, they're crazy as hell. They're going to use radical Islam as a means to hide behind to enforce their propaganda. Because obviously, as I said, that dude was struggling with his sexuality. He was a homosexual. He targeted, it was Latin night. Now pay attention to that. When he went to that club, it was Latin night. So he was specifically targeting Latinos. Even though there was like 5 or 6 black people that got killed in there, I think it was 3 or 4 white folks that got killed. The rest were all Latino. Go pull the research. You'll find out that this dude was on gay websites. He had his profile on 6 homosexual websites. He hung out with a lot of homosexuals, and he was also known in the transgender community. Now, the same flip side, this is the same dude that claims to be Hail ISIS and a radical Muslim. Usually what people have a phobia about is what they really are. That's what's really going on here. He is a homosexual at heart, but he had guilt over it because his religion condemns it. So his way to lash out and react was do what he did. And I'm telling you, the reason why he did what he did, he got rejected by a gay Latino dude. That's why he chose Latino night and targeted all those Latino people. Because what he said to some of the people behind the stall, if you read the story, are there any black people in here? And he said, speak up if there's any black people in here. And the girl, this is from one of the witness accounts, she was too scared to say anything. He said, there's any black people hiding behind the stall, I have no problem with you guys. You guys suffered enough. That's what he said to them. That's what he said. Go pull up the information. So he wasn't targeting black folks. The ones that got caught, the 4 that got killed, they just got killed in the melee. He was willing to let black folks go. I'm not saying that justifies what he did, because it doesn't. He was targeting specifically Latino people. But what it was, they're using the excuse. Now, here's the thing that don't make sense. Here's something that doesn't add up at all. Here's a guy that was interviewed by the FBI.